come back once more to the motivation for why you now do so much stuff.
Because I've learned that freedom is not free, and I found that the reason the whole world sucks and America sucks less is because the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, outlines an experiment where freedom rules the day of individuality, and that can only be secured by crushing those enemies that would take it away. So those warriors that put themselves in the face of that evil enemy, and anybody who would take away our individual rights and our individual freedoms, they're the enemy. They need to be killed. And the guys that went over and did that, they paid the ultimate sacrifice.
For a man who is a patriot, who purports to love his country, that was quite shocking disrespect to your president.
Let me put it in official CNN Piers Morgan interview terms. Shall I?
Yes.
My limey friend?
Yes.
Anybody that wants to disarm me can drop dead. Anybody that wants to make me unarmed and helpless, people that want to literally create the proven places where more innocents are killed, called gun-free zones, we're going to beat you. We're going to vote you out of office or suck on my machine gun. You can take it whichever way you want.
Much as I'd love to suck on your machine gun, the whole point of your defense is that a lot of people do drop dead precisely because you are armed to the teeth, and you'd like everybody else to be.
Not true at all.
80 people...
Write this down. See, you're so rich.
You write this down. 80 people a day die in America from gunshots.
And 75 of them to 78 of them, statistics by the Uniform Crime Report by the FBI and the UN study on violent crime, 78 of those 80 are let out of their cages by corrupt judges and prosecutors who know that recidivism is out of control, know that they'll commit the crimes again, and they let them walk through plea bargaining, early release, and program.
They still
Kiss my ass.
Yeah.
Where you have the most armed citizens in America, you have the lowest violent crime rate. Where you have the worst gun control, you have the highest crime rate. Piers, choose one. Do you want a lot of crime? We have it. Gun-free zones. Do you want less crime? We have that. More people with concealed weapons permit. Why do you guys resist that statistic?
Well, don't say you guys.
It's you guys.
No.
Well, unless you're playing the devil's advocate.
I can play any advocate I like.
You're doing a fine job.
Right.
You're playing the idiot's advocate here.
That's not the idiot's
More
advocate.
guns equals less crime. Period.
Unless I'm wrong, and I don't want to kiss your ass at this point, if you don't mind. Unless I'm wrong with your argument, well, you're basically saying that 90% of the gun crime comes from people let out of prison.
It's 96%, by the way, but go ahead.
But they still have to get access to firearms. If you had your way, there would be 10 times as many firearms, right?
Not true at all.
You want everyone in America to own a gun?
Not at all. I've never said that.
What's your position?
And I got to tell you,
what is your position?
And I hope you don't edit this out. Whenever I've done interviews with guys that are inclined to be anti-gun, they always go, well, Nugent wants everybody to have a machine gun. Nugent wants all the deer dead.
What does Nugent want?
Not even close.
What do you want?
What I want is the Second Amendment. We the people, free individuals to have the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. Find fault with that.
Well, I can find lots of fault with it.
Name one.
Well, the reality is...
I'll write one down.
Well, you end up with what happened to Gabby Giffords in Tucson earlier this year.
That guy had gone through the cracks of the mental health system. That guy had given all kinds...
How could he be allowed to get a gun?
Because he fell through the cracks, and he didn't qualify to get a gun.
He fell through the cracks.
The cracks of the mental health system. Everybody knew, all his friends, his family was afraid of this guy, but they didn't report it. Nobody reacted to it.
When you see a guy like that get open access to firearms because the Constitution that you subscribe adhere to so much.
How would you fix that?
Well, I would certainly make it a lot harder for people like him to ever get near a firearm. And that's my argument with the gun lobby, is that it's always very, very aggressive. And even as you've just exploded with me, it's always a violent debate. And it's always like, I want the right to shoot anyone that comes near me who's threatening me. But it's always about that. This guy was unstable, but was able to go and get a firearm because they are freely available in this country. And that's where I have a problem with it.
Were you born in England?
I was born in England.
Okay, are you familiar with Ireland?
I am.
Is Molotov cocktails and C4 explosive, those legal in Belfast?
They're terrorists.
Are those items legal in Belfast?
Well, I don't live in Belfast.
Well, then I'll go ahead and educate you. They're banned in Belfast. They're forbidden in Belfast. Do you think anybody had a hard time getting them? If you want something, how about in New York City?
It doesn't mean you
take me 15 minutes for me to get a submachine gun in New York City from some paroled crack
Let me spin the argument. Would you allow drugs then to be freely available?
Not at all.
What's the difference in the argument?
Because drugs are 100% about reducing your level of responsibility, getting high, disconnecting. And I'm a cop. I've been a cop for 35 years. I conduct federal raids with the heroes of law enforcement in Texas. In every instance where there is violence, somebody's high on something, but they're not always in possession of a firearms. They do it with Buicks and bricks and fire and chainsaws and pipes.
The guy who shot Gabby Giffords wasn't high, so it wasn't a factor.
Nobody was mentally deranged.
My point about the thread of your argument is you're saying there's a difference, isn't there, between you're saying guns should be made freely available. Right?
No, there should be restrictions.
Let me put something to you. If you think it's wrong, tell me. They should be made available with some restrictions, but not many, from the gun lobby arguments I've read.
Which exists right now.
The reason is if you made them illegal, they'd all be freely available anyway. But with drugs, you say do not make them freely available, make them illegal, even though you know and I know that drives them underground and probably more people get access to them.
Pierce, I don't know why you guys either don't study the information or you just resist it. I think you're resisting it. In America, where you have more citizens with guns on their person, you have a dramatic reduction in violent crime. In those areas called gun-free zones, you have a outrageous increase in the loss of innocent lives. That's the choice. Which one would you make? And in America, legally owned guns are used millions of times a year to save innocent lives. You certainly don't believe in calling 911 to stop evil in your home, do you? You don't believe that being unarmed and helpless is a desirable condition? You think unarmed and helpless is something you can control over me? That's weird.
Well, you're putting a lot of words into my mouth. What I do believe is where you dramatically increase the prevalence of guns, more people will die from guns.
No,
and you
false.
don't believe that.
Not only do I believe the FBI doesn't believe it. The FBI recent report, in those jurisdictions where more people have concealed weapons permits, that doesn't mean a gun in the truck or in the safe. It means a gun in their belt. In those jurisdictions, you have not only a dramatic decrease in violent crime, but a personal assault type crimes, carjacking, rape, home invasions. They don't just go down, Pierce. They go away. Now that you know that, why wouldn't you help me create more safe areas?
When we come back, we'll talk about what we're supposed to be talking about, which is President Obama.
Are you an American citizen now?
Not yet.
Well, I'll help you.
A British citizen.
You're just hanging out with me as a feather in your cap.
It's probably putting me off.
Somebody bring him a gun.
Are you an American? Were you born here?
Hopelessly, yes.
I've got a feeling you probably were.
Yeah, good feeling.
Hard to imagine you being born anywhere else.
You have some instincts. Are you a predator? I have friends that hate guns.
This doesn't
but I'm going to fix them.
But hey, it's a quaint old thing where if there aren't any guns, nobody gets shot.
And if there isn't any water, no one will drown. I'll tell you what, you work in the guns and stop the gun. I work in the water so no one drowns anymore.
You're right.
I'll see you at noon. It's impossible!
If there is no water, nobody does drown.
Wow!
You're right!
Then let's ban water, Pierce.
There's no sunshine,
Bridge
nobody
over
gets sunburned.
Get lost. You're weird. That's impossible. You can't ban water and you can't ban guns. Can't do it.
Why would you ban water?
To stop the drownings. We want the poor fat children
to
float.
Now you're just being facetious.
No, I'm being absolute. If you can ban guns, I'll ban water. If you can get rid of guns, I'll get rid of water.
I don't necessarily want to ban guns.
Impossible.
What I don't like is the kind of violent rhetoric of the gun lobby to say that their way is the only way. And actually, all these statistical...
Well, let me put it this way, really loving. My way is the only way. How gentle was that? My way is about I, as a free man, have the right to defend myself. And I got to tell you, I'm scared to death of people like you who might tell me I'm not allowed to defend myself. Because write this down. I am allowed to defend myself.
I didn't say you couldn't. Back now with Jesse Ventura and our live studio audience. Gun control. This is something I've been very animated about all this year with all the various gun outrages, especially the appalling thing at the cinema in Colorado. Why is it that Americans, to me it seems, so many Americans cannot divorce their right to defend themselves with a gun to the apparent right to go and buy 6,000 rounds of ammunition, high-powered assault weapons, and go and murder Americans?
Well, the best thing I can tell you, Piers, is this. Mexico has strict gun control. You cannot own a gun in Mexico. And they had 20,000 people dead last year in the drug cartel wars.
But Mexico has a very particular problem involving drugs. I can cite to you Britain, average... Well, let me just throw it back at you. In Britain, for example, an average of 35 people a year are murdered with guns. In Germany, it's about 40 to 50. France, the same. Spain, the same. Italy, there's a pattern here. America, 11 to 12,000 a year.
Yeah.
This country has more guns than anybody else and more gun murders.
Yeah.
It's inarguable, isn't it?
No, not
It
at
is.
all.
It is.
Because I was in the Philippines physically the day Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law and made himself a dictator. And the first thing that dictator did, he gave the people of the Philippines 2 weeks to turn in all their guns or it was the death penalty. Now, why would a dictator do that? Why would he make his #1 priority when he took over as dictator to disarm the public? The Second Amendment is there, and it was put in there not for hunting and fishing like they like to say, because back when they did it, if you didn't hunt or fish, you didn't eat. It was put in there so the citizens would have the ability, if their government became oppressive, they could defend themselves against oppressive government. And I think that overrules all the gun deaths, because let's remember something. A gun is simply a tool. I have a gun safe at home, and I've never come home and heard those guns going off on their own. People kill people. All right, how many people here die because of car accidents of drunk driving? Do we go to the Ford Motor Company and tell them stop making these automobiles because people get drunk and kill people in cars?
It's a facile argument.
It's a what?
It's a facile argument. There's no equivalence between drunk driving and lethal firearms. My point is...
Wait a minute. A car is a 2,000-pound projectile that can go 100 miles an hour.
I have no problem with an American believing that their right under the Constitution is that they can defend themselves, especially in their own home, if they're being attacked and they have a weapon.
It's also against government.
I have a big problem with a disturbed young man, as we saw in Colorado, being able to buy 6,000 rounds of ammunition and a high-powered assault weapon and go into a movie theater and blow away 70 Americans. I have a big problem with that.
Well,
and nobody else in America in high office seems to share that big problem.
Well, I'll tell you what, Piers. I have a conceal and carry license. Had I been in there, I would have taken this guy out before he could have killed that many people.
Well, I think that, again...
But because, let's remember, police can't stop crimes. Police show up after they're over. Remember that. So when you talk about me not being able... If there would have been a legitimate conceal and carry in that theater, quite possibly they could have taken this guy out and saved people's lives.
Or you could have had the gunfight at the OK Corral in there and lost even more lives, couldn't you? That's what could happen. Anyway, let's take a break.
What roll of the dice would you like? You'd prefer to be unarmed when he comes in? Give me my weapon when he comes in.
I think this country needs to do something about its gun laws. I really do.
I don't.
I think it is
There's already enough gun laws. They're already on the books.
Okay. Let's come back and give you... I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to give you the last word after this break. All the time, which is it's not a very good technique when you're debating with somebody. Just stick to facts.
Well, how many political offices have you held?
None.
Then don't tell me how to debate, because I've held 2.
Oh, I've debated many times.
But you've never won an election where a debate was required.
I think you make some very sensible points, and you make some crackpot points.
That's your opinion?
Yes.
How many people here think I make crackpot points?
Yeah?
1. How many think I make sensible points? You're in a minority, my good friend. You're the minority.
I said you made some sensible points. Let's go to another